Thank you very much, Yasi, and welcome everyone. My name is Johannes Schweifer. I'm actually a chemist, I'm a scientist, and I worked quite a long time as a consultant, solution architect, and project manager. My connection with blockchain technology is actually by having become one of the co-founders of Bitcoin Swiss, which is now one of the biggest brokerage firms of cryptocurrencies in Switzerland. But because I like technology, as I said, I'm a scientist, we assembled another team and I became co-founder of a company, CoreLedger, which delivers token economy solutions. And I'm CEO of CoreLedger. I want to talk a little bit about the impact of pandemics and disasters in general. I'm not an expert on disasters. It's just some general common knowledge view on impacts. If we experience a disaster, and it's something we have already known, heard about, experienced before, a tsunami, plane crash, whatever, then there is a known outcome. And for example, in the case of a plane crash, we don't expect all planes to crash down to Earth in the next day. But if something new happens, an event which has so far not happened or which has unknown magnitudes of consequences, then this event could trigger uncertainty, fear, and even panic. And this is actually the worst outcome of such an event, is this could trigger a change of behavior. Where could it have an impact? At the moment, when we look at what companies need in order to thrive, for example, stable legal environment, resources, customers, skilled employees, of course, liquidity to cover their bills, functioning markets, banking services, and of course, permission to operate, then we will see some of these things are not granted anymore. Our markets are not really functioning. Permission to operate, think about hairdressers. They don't have a permission to operate at the moment. So they are losing money, which has impact on liquidity, which has impact on customers. Customers, if facing some unknown and uncertain events, are reluctant to spend money, which leads to companies laying off workers, which leads to even less willingness to spend money. Uncertainty and fear could spread. It's not a must be, but it could happen. So this could lead to a vicious circle, which has one event, major event, triggering fear and panic, leading to other events, kicking off as a result of it. This could have an avalanche of events as a follow-up. Let's look at markets. Markets are normally in some state of equilibrium. Supply and demand are in balance, and if they are not, then balance is quickly restored. In a normal market, if things are in undersupply, then prices rise. It becomes profitable, for example, to produce it at other places. Supply is met. If there is an oversupply, prices decline, and people who considered buying it, but who were fended off by higher prices, think now is the right time to do it. But if there is a crisis, then markets get out of balance pretty quickly and in a pretty extreme way. For example, at the moment, only few people might consider buying a new car. But a lot of people are considering buying medical gear, masks, and therefore such things have become pretty scarce. Even toilet paper has become scarce for a certain time. So the bigger problem which happens as an effect of it is impact on money. It could happen, doesn't have to, but there's a big chance that it will. Money is not what it appears to be. At least, money is not a store of value in the sense as we know it. Money is backed by promises, sometimes military power, economic power, and above all, backed by laws. If companies are forced by law to accept a certain currency as legal tender, then money has a value. But actually, its value comes from using it. Using it means getting it, spending it, and having a cycle of these actions. This is referred to as velocity of money. Value does not come from storing it. So money is not a good store of value. Simplified economic model in normal times looks like this. People have jobs and earn money. And they spend this money and become customers maybe of their own companies. They might even be shareholders and earn on dividends. So ultimately, they profit from a functioning economy. In a similar way, the state collects taxes on both ends. So also the state earns on a functioning economy. And in turn, the state acts as a backup for emergencies. As you can imagine, right now, there is a huge case and a huge demand for this kind of backup. For example, several states, several countries, like Switzerland, they introduced short work, Kurzarbeit. The money has to come from somewhere. And there is only a certain amount of money collected in taxes per year and in a normal economy. If the economic situation is not as good as it has been, then money has to come from somewhere. So if the government, if the state has to spend more for aid, then there is only one source of money which is technically possible. There's no magic. Well, there is. The only magic known to the monetary system is the printing press. So where does the money come from? It comes from the printing press. What is the effect of too much money in the system? It ultimately leads to a situation where it simply buys less. So even if there are savings, they buy less and less. Savings melt. And this could cause just another event in the form of uncertainty about the future, about the purchasing power of money. Just recently, an article has been published on Cointelegraph, and I can share the link with you, which is about the 2 trillion aid package which the US government has recently decided on. And it contains a measure that every adult person in the US gets $2,000 per year, not only once, as aid. That is called helicopter money. And that could be one of the starting points for exactly this situation as displayed here. So the big question is, and that's actually the topic for today, how could blockchain help? Probably your thought, I might suggest Bitcoin, but I'm not. I don't think that Bitcoin will save the world. Bitcoin is expensive in operation. We have heard a lot about the energy consumption, and that's actually true. The proof of work principle on which it operates simply consumes a lot of electricity. And still, even though it has already been around since more than 10 years, the adoption rate is pretty low. People have heard about it, but only few are using it. Its price is heavily affected by speculation, and the liquidity of Bitcoin is not too high. Even if you encounter shops which allow you to pay with Bitcoin, the velocity of this Bitcoin which is earned is pretty slow. So it does not really act as a transaction currency, not in the sense as we know money. Furthermore, the number of transactions which are possible is very low per second, so it's also slow. It might be a store of value of some sort, although I'm not suggesting it or giving any investment advice. And here you see also the image from Cointelegraph, which has been published 2 hours ago, that the Bitcoin price just hits 7K again amid warnings that 2K payouts may may have an impact on the value of fiat currencies, such as the dollar. So if Bitcoin is not the solution, or not the most likely solution, then what is a potential solution? Well, practically, the technology behind Bitcoin, the blockchain technology, has given us the opportunity to create our own currencies, our own digital currencies, and we refer to it as tokens. So everybody can practically create such tokens. And what is it? A token is nothing else than a digital representation of some real goods or services. I bet every one of you has at least once in your life got some coupon for some service or for some good. I, for example, remember I got one from Pizza Hut. It was not a remarkably good pizza, not at all, but at least it gave me the opportunity to just hand over that piece of paper on which it was printed. The owner of this certificate gets a free slice of pizza. And that was what happened. That's what a coupon is. And that's what also a token is. A token is nothing else than a so-called IOU certificate against the issuer. It's a claim which allows you as the holder to claim the real good or service from the issuer. And what can you tokenize? There is a wide range of possibilities. Actually, there is almost no limit. You can tokenize your work time. For example, a plumber. A plumber can tokenize his work time by the hour. Or you can tokenize vegetables which you harvest in your garden. That's something which might be interesting for times of crisis. So 1,000 tokens of these garden greens might buy you a kilogram of these real, fresh, existing fruits. Or tokenized work in the form of lawn mowing or babysitting or whatever people can do and can deliver in times of a crisis or even beyond. Tokens have one big advantage. As they exist as some form of currency which stands only for itself, for the real good or service, they can transact without the need of money. Of course, nobody says that you can't buy a token against money, but you don't have to. You can simply, like in old times, exchange one token for another one. As in this picture, I could trade a garden green token for the plumber's work token. Whether or not the real good is claimed immediately afterwards, or weeks or months later, depending, of course, whether or not the product can be kept that long, is irrelevant. The token will still exist. And that's one of the biggest advantages which blockchain technology gives us. It allows us to record tokens and record claims by ways of tokens for actually an infinite amount of time. And using these tokens, exchanging them, or using it and claiming or settling them by claiming the goods or services for which they are the backing, we come to something we refer to as a token economy. And the token economy practically is nothing else but an economy in which primarily tokens are used to account for and to settle claims. You might wonder, where did I see this before? Well, we saw this in all the times, and we call it barter. In a barter economy, you exchange goods or services for each other. So we can run this barter economy on the blockchain. And in such a situation, for example, I could trade my vegetables for the work time. I have vegetables and I want and I need the plumber's work time. The plumber, on the other side, could offer his work time, but what he needs is someone to look after his kids. So the problem is, these situations, they simply do not match. I can offer vegetables, but what I will get is not what I want. The solution for this is something which is very unique to blockchain technology. It allows actually to combine individual offers. Just imagine this situation. There is somebody who offers his lawn mowing services in exchange for the vegetables. Somebody else needs these lawn mowing services and offers her service to look after kids. And that's exactly what the plumber needs. The plumber needs somebody to look after his kids. So you easily see this sequence of trades which can happen. If I trade my vegetables against the lawn mowing services, I or somebody else get some kids attendance and somebody else gets the plumbing service. Doing this in the real world with real goods and services would take days or weeks to complete. But doing it on blockchain is something which is possible in mere seconds. And the final outcome is exactly what I wanted. I trade some vegetables against the plumber's work, which I can later use as a coupon to claim his work for fixing, for example, my sink. Based on this idea and based on this principle, there can be a lot of different use cases. One of them is, of course, using those tokens to replace cash. It doesn't have to replace cash entirely, of course, but it could replace some fraction of it, which we normally would use in our all-day life. Another use case is prepayment for services which can later be claimed. I heard a story about somebody who is doing exactly this, but not with blockchain right now, but he could, with his barber. His barber, the barber shop, is at the moment closed, simply because he is not allowed to operate. But it's bad, because the barber would otherwise go bankrupt. So that person who told me that story said, I simply prepaid him for the next 10 times of my visits. And other people did that too. So the barber is happy, he can survive, and later I can claim these services. I simply did a prepayment. And a token is perfect for recording the claim. Another example would be the creation of self-sustainable barter communities like the one which I showed before. Or if some goods are sitting, for example, in a harbor, some trade items, some commodities, whatever, which are not tradable right now because there is no buyer, there might be somebody who wants to barter them. And that could be a possible solution for such defunct markets. Or as another example, maybe with a wider range, it could be used as an asset backing for loans, even in a dimension which involves entire states. Countries have raw materials and resources, and these resources can act as a backing, which are tokenized, of course, can act as a backing for loans by the World Bank or some other institution, which grants them a loan for a certain time. Tokenization also allows to remove intermediaries from otherwise profitable business. So if there is a business which simply is profitable because intermediaries claim their share and remove most of the profit, then nobody would be interested to do this business. But removing the intermediaries, because blockchain technology and tokens, they don't need any intermediary. Every transaction is peer-to-peer. Then such transactions, such business can become profitable. And as I said before, simply remembering claims which cannot be settled immediately, but could be settled in the future. Imagine, again, the vegetable token. which might not be vegetables which are growing right now because it might be winter, but they could be vegetables harvested in spring or summer. So in order to not forget these claims, the token can be used as a coupon for the future. And there are a lot more use cases. We recently came across a use case which is about granting financial aid to people, but to the end consumers, like this helicopter money example, but not by dollars being spent and sent directly to people's bank accounts, because probably they don't have a bank account. If they're living in third world countries, then they might need some other way to get these funds. And that way to get these funds might be tokens. Tokens which could be redeemed in the form of local goods or services, or money from institutions, and a lot more indeed. So this was a brief overview over how blockchain and tokenization can be a tool in order to overcome some problems which are caused by the current crisis. They are just solutions and suggestions which can be taken into account if looking for alternatives to the current economic situation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thanks, Hannes. Thanks for the presentation. And next, let's move on to the Q&A session. And feel free to post your questions in the window, and then I can pick up some questions. Hopefully, I can pick up all of your questions, and then Hannes can answer them. Okay, we have the first question coming. To properly function, a token economy market would need a certain critical mass of participants. Is there a market where you think the critical mass has been reached? Can you give examples of early adopters entering these infant markets?
At the moment, a lot of markets are forming. I'm not sure if any of those has already reached a critical mass, but already 3 years ago, I believe there have been, I believe about 3 years ago, there have been stories about local electrical grids and, based on solar panels on people's roofs and apartment balconies and so forth. And this model, for example, was a very obvious one, where people traded their power with tokens. That is a potential isolated market, which, if enriched with other items, could trigger some more adoption. To my knowledge, at the moment, there is no existing market which is liquid enough to be self-sustainable. But we are in times of crisis, so perhaps I'm proven wrong in 2 weeks or a couple of months. I'm not sure.
And then the next question is, if a token economy needs internet, what if there's a power shortage in the times of crisis?
Well, that is bad. But if you have a power shortage or internet problem for a longer time, then we have a problem anyway. This is a question I have been asked a couple of times, and the answer practically has not changed. There is one aspect to it, however. A blockchain lives almost forever as long as there is at least one copy of the entire blockchain. So whenever there's a power outage or something, then you can always restart a chain later when power is back. But of course, that doesn't help you if your economy builds on the existence of tokens. One other thing which can be used as a solution is to use hardware or paper wallets which can physically be exchanged. But then we are back in the situation where we have physical exchange and need physical proximity. So back to my first answer, if there is a power shortage and an internet problem, then this exactly is the weakness of the entire system. Then we have a problem. But this is also the weakness of the current economy. So also banking services won't work, internet won't work at all. We're back in the Stone Ages.
Yeah, so when we talk about back to Stone Age, it's very interesting you mentioned the barter earlier, but it's on blockchain. So the next question is related to examples in your presentation, that if someone sells the vegetables and use the money to buy for the plumber service, wouldn't that work as well?
Of course, that would work. But for this, you need somebody who is having money and who will spend or might spend the money, or wait a second, one step back. So yes, you need somebody who has the money, and if there is a situation where money loses its value, you might not want the value. You might not want the money. What you want is the value. So trading one thing against another thing means the goods or services for which they stand, they don't lose their practical value. An hour of lawn mowing is an hour of lawn mowing and stays that way. An hour of watching after somebody's kids is an hour of watching after somebody's kids. That's a work hour. That does not change. So, but the value of money might. So this is exactly the advantage of tokens. They just stand for themselves and they don't need any monetary equivalent or any price tag. So of course you can just sell and buy the tokens, or just sell and or offer some services and goods for money and buy them for money. That's of course okay. We are most likely facing a situation where we are using some hybrid models which exist in parallel.
So something similar to this question, but the next question is related to these tokens backed by individuals. So the question is, what do you think about the currency that would be backed by the individual tokens, for example, plumber service, babysitting, etc.? So basically a currency not backed by the governments, but backed by the services of people of a country. So what is your opinion on that?
Currency backed by the services of people. I basically like this because this for some time has been the unofficial backing of the German currency, Deutsche Mark. That's the work power of the entire economy. So yep, I like it.
Okay, and then next question is, how can a government use tokenization?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. How can
a government use tokenization?
Practically, a government could use tokenization in the way as described before, like distributing financial aid if the receivers have largely no bank accounts but have smartphones. A government can use tokens in the form of backing for loans. A government can also use these tokens by creating something which we at the moment have in the form of this short work situation. So people could tokenize their work. Companies can tokenize the output of their machinery, and the government can act as the buyer of last resort, in the sense that every overcapacity is bought by the state and used for some purposes, like instead of producing cars, producing ventilators which are needed, or something like this. So there are indeed a lot of options which countries and states have.
Okay, great. So we can take one last question, then we finish for today. So last question is, say we have enough parties willing to trade in a token economy market. How long does the deployment of your product take?
Practically almost no time. It's available right now. It can be used on 2 networks. One is the Ethereum mainnet, which is pretty slow. Another one is another Ethereum-based network, which runs independently and is faster. So such a system could run almost immediately by just using it and plugging into it. If an economy or if an environment grows, it can also be duplicated and you run into an individual, isolated, dedicated network. So there are a lot of options to use it. But just for starting to use it, exploring it, experimenting with it, it's already ready and available right now.
Great. Okay, I'm sorry that we cannot take all the questions for today. We are running out of time. So thank you very much for joining us. And we will upload today's session on our YouTube channel. And our next session will be on the 30th of April by our solution consultant, Stefan Wiemers. He will show you how to create digital assets in simple steps. And the registration will be open very soon. So please follow us on all our social channels at CoreLedger. And thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.